Righto, Year 11. Continuing now with our work on quadratics and solving quadratic equations. In Lesson 1, we looked at factorization and completing the square. Now, today, we're going to look at solving quadratics via the quadratic formula. But before we do that, I want you to do the starter question here on the screen, and I want you to pause the video now and solve this as requested by completing the square. So go ahead and do that now, and then come on back. Okay, so I guess you guys have already solved it. So here I go. I'll catch up to you now, and perhaps as you see me go through it, you might spot that perhaps you could have done it in this way, or maybe you can make a suggestion to me. But this is the way I would go about this. I would be taking my 5 out. Because I don't want it in there. It's not helping me complete the square, but it does mean I need to rewrite my coefficient of x to 2/5 x. All right, I'm not going to deal with the 1. I'm just going to pop him onto the other side of the equation. Okay, so I now have, therefore, 5. I could take that, even that 5 across. I could divide both sides by 5. I'm not going to worry about doing that at this stage. All right, I'm going to complete my square here now. So what I need to do is 2/5 x. I'm going to halve my 2/5, so 1/5, and then square it. So I'm going to end up with 1/25 here. Okay, now what's happened is that I have added not 1/25, but 5 by 1/25, so 5/25, 1/5. I've added 1/5 to the left-hand side, so I have to add 1/5 to the right-hand side. So now what I have is 5 by x plus 1/5 squared on the left-hand side, and I've got 6/5 on the right-hand side. Now dividing both sides by 5, and I've got x plus 1/5 squared on my left, and on the right-hand side dividing by 5 or timesing by 1/5, I'll end up with 6/25. Now, next move, x plus 1/5, I'll take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to end up with plus or minus the square root of 6/5 on the right-hand side. And I'm going to now subtract my 5th, so I'm going to end up with minus 1 plus or minus the square root of 6/5. Right, so congratulations if you're able to pull that one off. Now I'm going to get you to do another task, please, and if you can pause and do, that would be so much the better. Now I want you to solve this equation in exactly the same way. I want you to solve ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 by completing the square. All right, so your task and challenge is to undergo exactly the same steps as we just went through here with this example. Is get rid of that 5, get it out the road, complete the square, balance out, do all that stuff. You're doing it now with A's, B's and C's, but it's all the same idea. The algebra rules exactly the same, or if everything works the same. And what you're doing is you're solving. So you're solving for x. You're still solving for x. So at the end of it, you want x equals. Okay, press pause and have a go at that, and then come back and let's compare notes. Okay, so first job, as I did in the previous example, is to remove the a. So it's a outside of x squared. Now it's plus b over ax. I'm going to close the bracket there, and I'm going to hit negative c onto the other side. Right, now I've got an a here. I've got x squared plus b over ax. I'm going to complete the square now, as instructed. So that's half of b over a is b over 2a, and I'm going to square b over 2a. Now I'm going to write that down because that's too much really for my brain to hold. And so I'll square it in this next step. Okay, so the a is sitting there. I've got an x squared plus b over a x. Now I've got a b squared over 4a squared here. And I've got a negative c here. And in fact, I need to do something because I added this in, but I didn't do anything here. So that was a foul move by me. So what we need to do is, what I've added in is a times b squared over 4a squared. So I need to add that in on the other side. So I need to add a b squared over 4a squared, which will reduce to b squared over 4a. So I'll just pop that in there now, minus c plus b squared over 4a. Right, everything looks cool and balanced at the moment. Now let's rewrite this as a perfect square. So it's x plus, remember it's b over 2a is what's being squared. Always, 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 half of that guy there ends up there. Okay. All right, right-hand side, we have b squared. Now, if I'm going to make this a single fraction, I'm going to have to multiply that negative c by 4a over 4a. So I end up with that guy there. Cool. Now, I would like to divide both sides by a. So let's do that. So my next step would be to say that x plus b over 2a, all squared, is equal to b squared minus 4ac over 4a. Now I'm dividing by a, or I'm multiplying by 1 over a. So that gives me a 4a squared down in the denominator. So just tidy that up. I'm not trying to do too many steps, too many things at once here, just so it's all nice and clear. Okay, I've got a 4a squared there. Okay, now it's time to take the square root. So take the square root of both sides, and I've got x plus b over 2a on the left. And what have we got on the right-hand side? Well, I've got plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. And the square root of 4a squared is just 2a. Nice. Now I need to subtract b over 2a. I've got the same denominator here on the right, so that's not going to be too stressful for me. So I'm going to subtract b over 2a. So it'll be minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And I reckon that we've seen that somewhere before, haven't we? There's our quadratic formula. All right, get excited, quad formula. Now, I don't know if you've derived the quadratic formula before, but worth doing just to understand that it doesn't just magically pop up out of nowhere. It just pops up out of completing the square. It pops up out of solving ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, which is our general form of a quadratic equation. And if you go ahead and solve that, you end up with x equals minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac on 2a. Why do we use it so much? Because if we go back to our example up here, and if I lasso that, and drag him down, so now we'll solve him, but not by completing the square, but by use of the quadratic formula. We'll just see how much quicker it is. There's no point using it unless it's quicker. If we're just going to complete the square, so if you're happy doing what we did in the starter, you don't need the quadratic formula. All right, you be the judge. Let's see if it's easier. So let's go. So I can go straight to it, can't I? I can go straight to it. That's the benefit of the formula, is I just go straight to my solution. X equals minus b. B is negative 2, so it's minus negative 2. So it's just 2 plus or minus. Now this is where, let's not try and do too much at once here. B squared is 4. Right here is where we get errors. We're subtracting 4ac. So it's b squared minus, I need my product of 4ac. So it's 4 times 5 times -1. I'm going to write all that in there. You might think that's overkill. I don't, because I've seen too many errors happen here. 4 times 5 times -1. That's all going in there in the brackets, over twice a, 2 times 5 is 10. Okay, let's tidy this up. 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 minus 4 times 5 is 20 times -1 is -20. Okay, so many errors come out of that. Pretty much home and hose now. 2 plus or minus the square root of 24 over 10. What can we do now? That third can be simplified. So that's 2 plus or minus, that's 4 root 6, or 2 root 6 over 10. I've got a common denominator of 2, sorry, a common factor of 2. So it's 1 plus or minus the root 6 over 5. That's my solution for x. 1 plus or minus root 6 on 5, let's check. -1 plus or minus root 6 on 5. Where's my error? I had a... I'm so glad we did this question again, because I would never have come across this error. This is x squared minus 2/5 x. There's a negative minus there. That guy there is a minus. So that means that this here is minus. So I ran that mistake all the way through, didn't I? That's a minus. And then when it comes over here, it's a positive. So it's just 1 plus or minus root 6 over 5. So that might be a great example that the formula, even though the number of steps, what do? We really went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps to get it fully simplified, versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 steps, but perhaps just a few more places you can get it wrong up there. Because we've already completed the square in a general form, we've got the license now to use this formula. So it tends to be the go-to if you can't factorize, but if you'd rather complete the square and do all this, and you think your accuracy rate is going to be as high or higher than using the quadratic formula, I would argue that, in my experience, the quadratic formula is going to deliver the solution to you more accurately and more often, so I would use it. So I would use the quad formula when you can't factorize, unless you're told to solve by completing the square. All right, what I'd like you to do is now solve this equation. You're not told how to do it, but I've just been through that kind of decision-making algorithm. I think you should go through, look to factorize. If you can't factorize, use the quad formula. Press pause, go do. Okay, so what I'm going to try and do here is I'm going to try and factorize. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 2. I'm just doing this in my head, but I'm writing it down so you can see my thoughts. Multiply to 2, why? Because 1 times 2 is 2, that guy there. And add to 1. Multiply to 2, add to 1. Not going to happen, is it? -2, I could have managed it, but 2, I can only do 2 and 1. I'm not getting 1. It's not factorizing. I now go to the quadratic formula. So I say, therefore, x equals minus b plus or minus, b squared is 1 minus 4ac is 4 times 2 times 1, which is 8, over 2a is 4. I've got minus 1 plus or minus, look at this, 1 minus 8. Now normally that means we've made some kind of mistake. Alarm bells are ringing. Perhaps I've got a double negative here I haven't taken account of. But if you look at it, everything's positive up here. So no, I haven't made that error. What I've got here, that's my solution. X is equal to minus 1 plus or minus the square root of -7 over 4. Now in the past, what we've done is that we've said no solution. Therefore, there is no solution. We're going to be more specific. We're going to say there's no real number solution. Because anytime now, we're going to start talking about this being a solution, because we're going to introduce another set of numbers that are going to allow for this solution. So we need to be a bit more specific. There are solutions, there's just no real number solution. I think you should go and do exercise 3C from the textbook. I'll see you soon.